hear peripherally about the pickup artist community. And again, all I did was see that show and I almost thought it wasn't real. Can you explain to people like me that don't know much about it what on earth that involved?
Oh man, we could talk about this just for hours. So, the pickup artist community, if I had to describe it simply, was a loose knit community of men from all over the world sharing tips and advice on the internet for how to achieve their romantic desires. And this was largely, you'd get these guys after the advice that the world had given them from their parents or their teachers or whatever completely failed. They couldn't get a date, they couldn't get a girlfriend. Once they realized all that advice didn't work, they would Google things on the internet or search for things and discover there were other people saying, hey, I tried this tactic, it worked really well. So I tried it on another girl and it worked really well. I think this is something that just works. So people would kind of try and figure out what quote works. And then from that sort of derived an entire female psychology. Like, okay, we know this works. Why does this work? What does this say about the way women make their romantic decisions? And it turned into this whole field that frankly was no less of a quote art and science than secular psychology in general, which is also mostly theories, and they don't have any data or facts necessarily. They can observe phenomena and try and deduce from that what's going on in people's heads. And the interesting thing is a lot of the theories that the pickup artists came up with 10 or 15 years ago have since then been validated by large peer-reviewed sociological studies. Things that you could have asked these anonymous guys on the internet and they would have told you, oh, this is how a woman thinks about XYZ. 10 years later, they have a big, probably six-figure funded study just to come to the same conclusion. It is real. Mystery, the star of the pickup artist show on VH1, had a very specific style of doing things. But he really made the whole thing popular, I would say. He wasn't the first one. He was certainly the most... he knows how to draw attention to himself, which was, his whole gimmick. You walk into a club, he's like 6'6" or something, with platform heels on, wearing a giant top hat and goggles. Immediately you have everyone's attention in the whole bar, right? So he kind of brought this stuff to the forefront, or at least Neil Strauss did through his book, The Game, in which Mystery was, I don't want to say the protagonist, but at least a featured character. But there were many different styles that people went through. Mystery's style was called indirect, which was all about not hitting on a woman, but rather making her prove that she's interested in you before you reward her with interest of your own. Then there was what's called the direct style, which was more like brash and Chadley, I guess you could say, where you just compliment a woman, you let her know what you want up front, and then, go from there. There were as many styles as people involved. But it was really a fascinating place to be. And even though I've repented of my sin that I engaged in that world, a lot of the stuff there is accurate representation of male-female dynamics. That's more accurate than you're going to learn from school or your teachers, certainly. I actually tried to convert Mystery at one point, whose real name is Eric, to Christianity, but he's very deep into Gnosticism and I think the occult as well. I don't know if you noticed, but on the show, The Pickup Artist, the little medallions that he gives out at the end of every episode, they were Germanic runes. It was like an occult sigils, basically, symbols. Now, he's never, to my knowledge, publicly talked about being involved in the occult, but from my conversation with him and from observing that, I think it's a safe bet that he's into some occult practices, which a lot of those guys, I think, were, at least the very famous ones.